Hi, welcome to another episode of my tips for a professional penetration testing or security analyst career. Today I want to talk about BurpSuite Pro. This video was long overdue and I had a hard time finding a window for me to talk about it because I'm so busy with my work. So you'll notice I'm running BurpSuite Professional. That's the version I use for my work. I created a temporary project and I started the software. Now, first thing you want to do when you start a new project is to define the scope. I don't really have an application, nor I can show you a real world app to pen test, but what we can use is something like DVWA or Damn Vulnerable Web Application to explain how BurpSuite works and how easy it is to pen test the web application through it. Alright, so we're going to use this vulnerable application called Them Vulnerable Web Application. That is a vulnerable application designed to teach you the basic principles about web application pen testing. The login here is admin password, and here it is. Now let's set this to the scope. First of all, when you start intercepting the traffic, you're gonna see a bunch of stuff that doesn't belong to the scope URLs or IP addresses, and we don't want that. You want to have only the stuff that's related to your engagement, because you don't want to pen test stuff that's not included and it's out of scope. You could have legal issues. So first of all, let's intercept the traffic. If you guys are unaware of how you do it, in Firefox you go here and you click Manual Proxy Configuration. After doing that, I like to do a couple of things here. First, I go here and check these options. Then I also enable these options here. Sometimes you can see hidden fields, and playing with them you can see a lot of stuff going on. Once you do that, you see that the target sitemap is empty. It will start filling up as we start defining the scope. So the scope here is our vulnerable application. That's the scope for our pen test. Of course, we want to add this element to the scope. Another thing you want to do is remove other scope items right here too. So once you do all this, you start seeing stuff in the history. I don't understand why it says 1, 2, what is 1. We had a typo in our scope, and that's why we were intercepting traffic. So hopefully now this should be working. There you go. So what does Burp do? Basically, it's a traffic intercepting proxy. So you can intercept the traffic between two endpoints and manipulate it and understand what issues you have on these web servers and how to attack them based on what you find. So we intercepted the request. At this point, we can right click. This is something you can do mostly on the pro version. The community version doesn't have the scanner. So if you want to make an investment for your penetration testing or bug bounty hunter career, I would warmly recommend you to buy a BurpSuite Pro license because that has a high return in terms of what you find. We'll start seeing that the sitemap populates with a bunch of stuff. We want to show only scope items. You see a bunch of stuff that doesn't belong to the scope we're supposed to pen test. And you start seeing a bunch of issues. You see clear text omission of password and a bunch of other problems. Now the difference between the exclamation mark and the question mark is that the exclamation mark indicates a certain issue while the question mark highlights a potential issue. Anyway, the way you test the web application is to browse the web application itself the way you would do normally and have BurpSuite log all the pages you find, and also you can use this to practically brute force directories the same way you would do with Derby or other tools, but this is way more powerful than that. That's all in the start because we don't see a lot of stuff in this URL because we're now logged into the web application, but we know what the default credentials are, so we can log in and see more stuff. So we're practically pen testing under a black box approach or perspective, as a potential attacker having no access whatsoever to the application. Anyway, yeah, logged in, and now we can see a bunch of different stuff. Keep in mind that when you intercept the traffic, the web page won't load until you release it. A way to make things faster is to turn it off when you don't need it. Anyway, we can see some of the issues that we can have in a web application. This is, for example, a very serious problem. In fact, if we go to this type of page, We can reload the page in the browser too. If we log out and say we don't know what the default credentials are for this application, and we submit them through this form, and we intercept the traffic, right? What happens here? An attacker intercept the credential, right? So what you're gonna do? Basically, you click send to repeater. What happens here? That you can replay the GET request and see what's going on. And now, if we go to the browser, we successfully logged in. So the problem with this type of issues is that a potential attacker will intercept valid credentials and in clear text and could easily log in as an authorized user, and it's easier to understand what kind of consequences could come from this. This is much more common than you guys would think. I often see this type of issues in my engagements. So if we didn't know what the password was, we can also have used intruder to launch a brute force attack. So let's reuse the same request here and let's send it here. So we go first here, and you want to clear all this because this is automatically highlighted by Burp, but you don't always want all of them. So we only want these two positions here, username and password. Now the two types of attack only allow one position, which is one payload. So we need to use pitchfork or cluster bomb to have two different payloads. At this point, you go here and I'm gonna add a couple of usernames just for show. I mean, I know what the username and password are. So this is the username. Let's add a couple of usernames just for show. And the second payload, let's add a password, which is we know it's password, but just for show, let's see the difference between a successful login and an unsuccessful login, and how we can understand from a brute force attack when we have a successful login. So other than that, We can also go here, and I normally do like this. At this point, we have all the elements we need to launch a brute force attack. So let's click Start the attack. Anyway, we need to make sure when we start testing this application that the security level is set to low if you want to learn as a beginner, because if you toggle it as impossible, you'll never be allowed to see any vulnerability basically. You need to work your way up to that level essentially. So let's start like this. So let's log out of the application and let's see what happens if we try to intercept the traffic and guess what the correct username and password combination is. In the meantime, our traffic was logged, so we can see more pages being added to the sitemap. In a nick of time. This is the power of BurpSuite, especially the Pro version, because you don't see any of that in the community version. And in my opinion, it's money well spent for a license if you want to be a pentester or professional bug bounty hunter. So we intercepted a request on the login page. I purposefully chose wrong credentials. So at this point, let's send it to intruder. And we know that we have both username and password in clear text. Notice how the security level now is low. Okay, so we need to use a payload allowing for two sets of payloads. So the first is the username, so I'm going to enter a couple of values. Just for this sake of argument. Okay. Let's now enter a couple of values here for the error message. And let's start the attack. Now let's try to understand the difference between a wrong set of credentials and the right one. Let's focus on the response. You notice we weren't successful, we didn't log in. Let's now move to these that we know these are correct. And you see, we're in. So, this way, an attacker can successfully impersonate the valid user when credentials are transmitted in clear text. This is one of the possible uses of BurpSuite to attack a web application. Other ways BurpSuite is used is to find issues both automatically and through manual validation. As for automated tools, BurpSuite has a scanner which is very powerful and can detect a series of issues automatically. Now, we might want to navigate to more pages to have more issues highlighted here. As for manual validation, it's very easy to validate issues with BurpSuite manually because sometimes the automated scan doesn't highlight all the possible issues and you discover them manually. In this case, we know from the page that there's a SQL injection, but let's say we want to throw something random at this page. We first intercept the request, and what I normally do is send it to repeater and see what the response is. Is successful. One thing I would normally do also, and for example I can do here, something I learned how to do manually. I normally use any specific search field or stuff like that and throw random stuff at a page. For example, this specifically tells us a vulnerability exists, but I sometimes do also something like this. Now this sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it doesn't work, but that's the way I test potential cross-site scripting vulnerabilities manually. In this case, we're given a specific hint this page is vulnerable, so you may simply want to do something like add in the parameter or simply intercept the request and manipulate it like this. Instead of entering our attack in the search field, we can manipulate the request and do it through burp. It's the same thing at the end of the day. This is the most basic cross-site scripting attack. And there you go. You see that the page is vulnerable. I was able to successfully score reflected XSS attacks several times over my career so far. So this is much more common than you guys would think. And it comes down to lack of secure code reviews and server side other than client side validation, and especially the lack of web application firewalls in place. Anyway, the added value from something like Burp is that it can discover hidden directories and files. So this is only an intro to BurpSuite, as the tool is really extremely complex, and I'm probably lacking a systematic explanation, but I learn as I go. So one thing that's very interesting for BurpSuite is the fact that you can add a series of extensions that really help you out. For example, one I use a lot is mmap parser, which practically parses an mmap scan and automatically adds all the web ports and the web servers found in a map scan to your BurpSuite scope. So this is pretty cool. The way you install it is, you need the standalone component. So now that we saved the standalone, simply go here this way. We can finally install this extension, and I'll show you in a second how handy it is. Cool. So I don't remember if I have some mmap scans here somewhere. Okay, I'm gonna parse this. Now, I don't think I'm revealing anything special on this point of view because machines change. So the way you use the plugin is you search for the XML version of your mmap scan, and you add a series of ports, for example, or and there you go. Now this wasn't very helpful, but if you have a bunch of files, they're automatically spidered and added to the target scan and to the sitemap, which is pretty cool. Alright, so this is only an intro, and I'll start digging into more stuff later. So let me know what you think about that. Have a good one.